Yeah. If you got the course book, I'm going to be on fear and conflict on page 28. The purpose of this is to prepare me for London.
Did you say page 28?
Page 28 in the text. And if there's any area of your life right now that you have any conflict in at all, then this is the section. That's why Spirit sent you here today. It's because for whatever reason you needed to hear something that was being said today. Whenever the Course refers to I, basically the Course in Miracles has a very far out premise. It basically, supposedly, is Jesus speaking through a Jewish atheist psychologist. Now, if that's not hilarious, I don't know what is. And correcting a lot of misperceptions around what he taught. Now, whether you believe that or not, it doesn't really matter. What really matters is the meaning of what's said. So if there's something that's said today that resonates for you, then that's why you came. For me, it was great because it changed my whole perception of Jesus, because I grew up Southern Baptist in the South, and I was taught a lot of fearful perceptions of Jesus. And it's good to have a relationship now that's not based on fear, but that's based on love, while still honoring all other great spiritual masters and all other great spiritual teachers. I find that in the New Age, New Thought community, it tends to be full of people who have a lot of issues around religion and spirituality and God because of things that they were taught when they were young. Interview, did you find that you have a big resistance? And the Course in Miracles uses Christian terminology to describe universal spiritual themes. And it has its own definition for everything that it says. So whenever you hear even words that you're familiar with, like if you hear the word Christ, the Holy Spirit, all those things, the Course in Miracles has its own definition of what that means. And the Holy Spirit is merely the part of you that's totally aware of your divine nature and also aware of the situations and circumstances that you think you're in right now. The Holy Spirit just represents the part of you that knows the truth and also knows that you don't know it. So it's the part of you that bridges the gap between fear and love. And because the Course is only talking about fear and love, that's the only thing the book is talking about. So if you want an instant modern language translation, you just substitute fear and love for everything that you read. Another thing to keep in mind is that the Course in Miracles has its own way of being read and studied. Now, what do I mean by that? There are some guidelines to studying the Course. Basically, the guidelines say, you need not believe it, you need not accept it, you need not welcome it, that you may resist some of it. Some of it's going to be hard to believe, and some of it's going to startle you. It says it straight up. You don't have to believe it, accept it, or welcome it. Some of the stuff I say is going to startle you. Some of the stuff that I say you're going to not believe. Some of the stuff I say you're going to have a lot of resistance to. And then it says you're not asked to judge the ideas at all. So in other words, it's really not about me analyzing the ideas. He says if you use the ideas, which I think is interesting, if you use the ideas, he says then the ideas will show you that they are true. It didn't say if you use the ideas, you'll show yourself that it's true. I thought it was interesting that it said if you use the ideas will show you that they're true. That's a different take on that. So when it says I, it's talking about your higher self. It's also, when you hear I, for those who are open to that, it's talking about Jesus guiding us through what it's talking about. So that's the scariest part of doing the Course in Miracles, is dealing with the perceptions that people have of Christianity and Jesus based on the things that they've learned growing up in our guilt-ridden society that teaches them guilt and sin. And I understand that. I went through the same thing. So it says, in fear and conflict, so I'm going to move through this kind of fast today, because one thing I've realized from teaching the Course so long, it doesn't matter. Everybody always hears the one thing that they need to hear. But what I can do after 30 years of working with it is when I go through a paragraph, I can come right back out of that paragraph and give you the main point that it's trying to make from that paragraph to kind of speed things along. For instance, it says, being afraid seems to be involuntary. Now, if you're reading the Course, I'm going to show you how you can read it really easy, because people think reading the Course is hard, but really reading the Course is just different. It's a difference. It's actually easier to read the Course than a regular book. because the course assumes that you don't understand what it's saying. And so it always gives you definitions of everything that it says right after saying it. Okay, so it says being afraid seems to be involuntary. What does that mean? If you notice, if you're reading the book, it's got a comma right behind being afraid seems to be involuntary. That means that something beyond your own control. Something that's involuntary looks like it's something beyond your control. So he says sometimes it looks like you can't help but be afraid. All of a sudden, even though you may say you don't want to be afraid, you feel afraid. Then it says, yet I have said already that only constructive acts should be involuntary. So we should get to the point that we can't help but do constructive things. Just like right now, it seems like we can't help but do some things that hurt us sometimes. He says we're going to get to the point that we can't help but be helpful. That you're going to do cool stuff and you can't help it. Then it says my control. Now think of your higher self talking to you, God, Spirit, whatever you like it to be. It says my control can take over everything that doesn't matter, while my guidance can direct everything that does matter if you so choose. So if there's anything that does matter in your life, you can be guided right now through that situation. So whatever's up for you right now, you could receive guidance about how to have peace in this situation. Then it says, fear cannot be controlled by me, but fear can be self-controlled. There's nothing outside of you that can control your fear, but you can control your fear. Then it says, fear prevents me from giving you my control. So what keeps us from surrendering to a higher power is our own fear. The presence of fear shows that you've raised body thoughts to the level of the mind. That removes them from my control and makes you feel personally responsible for your body thoughts. This is an obvious confusion of levels. In other words, we think it's the physical level that's creating everything, and it's really not the physical level that's creating everything, it's the mental level that's creating everything. We're totally confused about what's making our reality. We think our reality, he said, we think our reality is being created by something that's happening out there, but the truth is our reality is being created by the thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs we have inside our mind. You with me on that? The world teaches you that that you're a victim of everything and everybody else is to blame for what you're going through. The course teaches you that you're responsible for the way that you're seeing everything through the way you interpret your experience. So what you are experiencing is actually a result of your own thoughts, your own feelings. Paragraph 1. Any questions about that first paragraph or anything I said in it that you need clarification on? Go ahead. It's good to know you're listening. Oh, great. I mean, that's wonderful.
Yeah. So about this fear thing, Mike, about this fear thing, because the two biggest fears, probably the two biggest fears that I have, is that I'm going to be left behind by God if I don't get this, or if I don't do it right.
Okay, I understand what you're saying, but that's not true. That's just what you're telling yourself. That's the thing. That's the only thing you have to remember. That what you just told me is just what you're telling yourself. Did everybody get that? That what he just told me is just what he's telling himself. It wasn't like a voice came out of the ethers and say, "Chris, I'm going to leave your butt behind. You shall not have joy." No, if you be honest with yourself, you're just saying what you fear based on how you learn to look at things. That's it. And the more you study the truth, the more you're going to realize that's not true. That's why I always tell people, you ain't going to see no change if you don't study. Sorry. There will be no change until you and I focus in on the truth like we do everything else in the world that we think is so important for us to do. Took me a long time to get that one. I always had time for everything else but my spiritual study. But I always expected the greatest results from my spiritual study. Y'all know what I mean? It's like I always look for God and the truth to come through when I'm going through something. But if I would really be honest with myself, I only focus on God and the truth when I'm in crisis, when I'm afraid, and when I'm unhappy about something. It's when I'm going over the cliff that I yell God. Other than that, I'm not really interested. But I'm upset because the universe doesn't come through. But this is the trip about it. Spirit always comes through, but if you haven't established a communication with your higher self, then you don't even hear. It's like, I'll tell you a great example. It's like you need help and you speak English, but the help is speaking French. But you haven't learned how to speak French. So when the French voice says you go around the corner and that's where you're going to get the answer, you don't speak French. So you don't hear it. So doing spiritual study or establishing communication with your higher self, it's the same as learning a language, a new language, so you will know how to be communicated with. Because love doesn't communicate like fear does. Love doesn't act like fear does. So you got fearful people trying to hear love, but most fearful people only know how fear operates. And so I'm going to keep checking in with everybody. Is this making sense to everybody? Yeah. So when you say God isn't helping me, it's just you're saying I don't speak French yet. You're getting all the answers to everything that you think is going on in your life right now. I swear to you, every single thing that you think is blocking you in any kind of way, you're being answered constantly as to how to have that solved and healed. You don't speak the French of God. So even though it's like it's saying blah, 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 blah. What? I speak fear. I speak separation. I don't speak union. I speak victim. I don't speak responsible. You know, I speak I'm different from you. I don't speak I'm same as you. I speak there's a such thing as guilt. Spirit speaks there's no such thing as guilt. There is only innocence. So what the Holy Spirit is the part of you that translates for you. You need a translator until you learn how to speak French. But people in the world, they don't even want to listen to the translator. But they want the answer. And that was me. So whenever I say that, I'm talking about me. Because I learned a long time ago, if I go ahead and own my own ego, that joker gets out of the way faster. And the solution comes quicker than when I used to pretend I didn't have that particular issue. So a lot of times, what I would like you to do, if at all possible, when I ask about a question, I would like to be able to clarify what I just got through talking about. So is there any questions about this whole idea that being afraid seems to be involuntary, something beyond your control? We were just told spirit cannot control your fear. Spirit will never get rid of your fear because spirit can't take your fear away. Fear is self-controlled. And in the next paragraph, it's going to talk about why is it that I cannot let myself be controlled by a higher power then? If there's a higher power that loves me, why can I not let myself be controlled by that higher power? And the Court says, because your fear prevents you from letting spirit control you. You mention God or spirit to most people, they think it equals sacrifice. They think it means they're going to have to give up the stuff that most of them don't have no way. It's like people are afraid they're going to have to sacrifice something that they haven't even achieved yet. You know. So he says, so whenever I want to surrender to the knowledge of a higher power, then I'm going to feel responsible for what's going on because I'm not letting it be healed by listening to a higher power. Any questions about anything I've said? Any clarification? If I was to ask everybody what I just said, everybody will go, yep, I got it. I know exactly what you just said.
I think you cannot control fears because majority of fears are growing out of major and primary fear of death.
Okay.
And the way we should be kind of functioning or operating, we cannot run away from fears. And it's not matter of control. You don't have any power to control anything actually, because this is not reality where we live right now. But if you will be able to face your fears and let them go, then the fears will go away.
Thank you for sharing your point of view. That's what you just shared. It isn't necessarily the truth any more than everything I'm saying is the truth. That's your point of view. I believe it can be, but that's my point of view. And what I'm sharing is what the Course is saying, and that's it. So I'm not defending it at all. I'm not saying you're wrong in what you're saying. I'm just saying there's another way to look at it. And the Course looks at it differently and also agrees with a lot of what you said, which is interesting. But any questions?
What about when a person comes into your life that is the reason that you're now fearful?
Well, the Course teaches that the fear is always fear of loss.